Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, 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 yeah. Anyway.
What were you doing in
Right.
Maryland?
So for this tour, I didn't rent a van because for that festival that we just played, I just borrowed my dad's car because he has like a SUV, and then because then I had already. It's a long story because we got booked for this tour that I'm doing this week. Um, we got booked for that back in like June, and then so I had already booked like the van for those dates, and it was like too much money to like add more days, like another
Yeah.
week. And I was like, there's no point of just getting this. I'll just borrow my dad's car. And then so I just dropped it off, and now I'm back, you know.
When you're young, touring is so like alluring, and it's like a fantasy that you just want to do, and then you're in it and you're like, wait, is this what everyone's dealing with, or is art dead as we know it?
Dude, it's so funny because it's so funny that you say that because my old like the old band that I used to play with and like tour with, it was just so like the way that the perspective was, it was just so much more of like a fantasy world, like
Mhm.
compared to like now, which is like full like it's just like I'm not gonna say that I don't we don't have fun doing it because we definitely do have fun, but it's just like there's so much like so many numbers and like just like price points that need to be like hit and like worried about. So it's a little bit trickier than it was when I didn't care about that kind of stuff.
What do
Now
you
it's
think
like,
changed about it? Is it just scaling it, or is it something about like the culture, or
to it, I think it's mostly for the scale that GLOM is at now. That's why it's like a little trickier because when GLOM started touring, like just doing like weekenders and stuff like that, it was like less important about like making sure the money made sense and stuff like that. Now like we have a team and like we have like agents and stuff like that, so it's like we got to like make sure it like makes a little bit more sense on paper before we say yes to something, you know. And
yeah,
so
or yeah. Are you like, are you not glom in your brain? Like, is there a separation between? It's just funny the way you said
yeah,
that.
it's fun. Okay, let me I'll with that question I'll give you the full like the shortened story of it.
Cool. I
When
mean, you could give the long story of it. We're on a
okay.
podcast.
Okay. When we when GLOM began, it was in like 2016. I'm sorry, 2017, 2018. It was a little later than that. And it was started by me and essentially my three friends from high school, right? We had been playing together. We played together in high school a bunch, and then like in college and stuff, like they kind of, did their own things musically and like stuff like that. And I was playing in like a touring band and stuff like that. And then after that touring band that I was in like stopped playing, we decided to start something for ourselves, like something that was, what we wanted to do and stuff like that. And like they all lived in New York, and I was living in at that point I was living in Baltimore, and I would come up every Wednesday through Monday essentially and stay the weekend, like a really long weekend, and we would like work on stuff, record stuff, like some demos, play, rehearse and stuff like that. And then in like 2018 we started playing shows. And 2019 we released a record. 2009 end of 2019 we started recording the second record. And then 2020 we put it out, but then COVID happened and stuff like that. So people's priorities shifted. Like some of the guys in the band didn't want to like play music anymore. Essentially, that was pretty much it. And the guy that I had started the band with, who was like he was like my financial partner in the band. He decided to leave the band and stop playing music in like 2022 ish, and then that was like a crossroads for me because I was like, oh man, like I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this on my own, even though like I was writing all the songs. And when we started the band, like it was always like my songwriting and stuff like that. It was my vision. And then so that's why I realized, I can do it. I can do it by myself. And so from in the eyes of the government in the US, it's just me. It's just me. But as far as the business side of it goes, and I don't know, like I've just also found that it's a little easier for me to do the work that I do on social media and stuff if it's just like me, you know? And so
Yeah.
I'll just like, post videos of selfies of me and stuff like that, whatever, like stupid shit like that. Um, but again, the people that play in the band, so that the live band, it rotates sometimes, but for the most part, everyone that's the keyboard player was in the original lineup of the band. The drummer was the second drummer in the band, so he started playing with us in 2019. And then the bass player has been playing with GLOM since 2022. Um, and that's pretty much it. Like it's just a funny to answer your question after that long-winded description. Yeah, it's just me, but those guys have been playing with me for a long time, so
Yeah.
you know.
Is that weird for you to find success after that journey? I don't want to be like, are they mad? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to
No, no,
be,
no, no.
but like, it's cool. It's weird. You know what I mean?
It's funny because that's a good question you bring up because one of the guys that was in the original lineup of the band, he still does all the producing for the band. So all of the recordings and stuff, it's still just a collaboration with me and him. And so in a lot of ways, like there's a lot of bands that have situations like that where they have like people that are involved in like the back end kind of stuff that don't want to tour. And so it's funny to see like, I mean, granted, I don't want to be taking anything for granted. We, are not like the most successful band in the world yet, but the semblance of success that we have received now, it is funny for him personally to see because it's like even though he's not playing live anymore, he's still seeing it and he's like, "Yo, like this is kind of sick," you know.
Yeah.
And for example, like, and then the original drummer in the band, like he like is still one of my best friends, and like we're gonna go. He doesn't live in New York anymore, and we're gonna go stay at his house on the way to this tour this week. So like, it's all good. Like, if they are all extremely proud to see what's happening.
Yeah. Cause that's like, all right, so I'm a stand-up and I usually tour with rappers. So
Yep.
those are very individualistic things. So that's
Right.
like the band world having to like deal with other people is so foreign to me and also
Right.
just seems so like impossible.
Right.
Impossible. Like just to work with other people. I'm a weirdo, you know what I mean? So
Right.
that's what I
Right.
wasn't sure if it was like a you project, but
Well, I mean, realistically speaking, when the original when the original band was together, um, it was kind of funny because every decision that I made, I had to kind of like run it by them first.
Mhm.
Um, and to be perfectly blunt about it, like I much prefer the way it is now because it's like if I have an idea, like really, like it's just such micro. There's nothing even like super consequential, but just like social media ideas, like a post or like a story or anything. Like I kind of had to like ask if they were down because like in a way, like back then, like everything that I did online like represented them in a way.
Yeah.
There was nothing crazy ever happened, of course, but I'm just saying like now like I can kind of just make these moves on my own and it works. So it's fine, like
Yeah.
I, I I understand what you're saying about the rapper thing because it is now like the situation as far as like the business decisions and like what um how I book shows with like the team and stuff like that. I still am the one like we they're the lineup that it is now like they're down because like with the decisions that we make and the shows that we decide to play, they're good. They're good shows now. So it's like it's better to just be like I don't know, not to get like too like astrological or whatever, but I'm a Capricorn, so like I kind of like being able to just make my own decision on my own. and just be like, hey, like we're gonna play this festival.
Okay.
Are you available?
What does being a Capricorn mean? Because I know what being a
Okay.
Cancer means, but I think that's just because like people have told me that so much. You know what I
Okay.
mean? They're like
Capricorn's like, and I'm not just trying to say this to gas up myself or gas up Capricorns or anything, but like, yo, like Capricorns are like technically speaking, like they're leaders, you know, and like they're also very stubborn and they're also very, uh, you know, focused on like money and stuff like that. And again, like in a lot of ways, I'm not necessarily like focused on money. Super, like that's not like the most important thing to me at all. But like the leadership aspect, it it's funny to be the leader of this band now because not to say that I wasn't necessarily the leader before, but like I'm saying like now, especially the way that like we have it structured where it's like I've been in bands before where the leader of the band was someone that can't really make decisions and not it's not easy. It's not easy to go on the road with people that are like or like just even play any show with someone that's like a little bit more not as like time sensitive, if that makes sense. Like
yeah.
and so that's one of the things is like I'm like really like strict about like yo we got to leave by 10, we got to leave by like we and then like I've been in playing in bands since I was 12 years old and like so bands that I had been in where the leader was like someone that was a little bit more like chill or be like yo like we're gonna be like an hour late to sound check and I'm like I don't know we can't do that like we're not doing that
Yeah.
no
A
no, no.
disrespect of time is something that I've seen even successful people start to fall off when they,
Oh yeah
and that's something that
sure
was taught really. It's like people don't like Kevin Hart. You know what I mean? People don't
right
think he deserves the success. But I was listening to an interview from Kevin Hart once, and he was saying that he's always a man of his word and he's always
right
early. And I was like, that's probably what's led him more to success more than like because people are always like, why is he so successful? It's like a
yep
respect of people's time is
yep
going to lead you so much farther than
absolutely
yeah.
absolutely I think that what's funny about it is that I have seen within like the music industry, like this like even like the dip of the toes that we have been experiencing with like the bigger side of the music industry, specifically the show, like the show industry, the live music industry. It's like, dude, the most important thing is just being there on time. That's like the most like being reliable. Like obviously, like there's some people out there that are just like amazing drummers or amazing bass players and stuff like that, but they're not there. They're late, and so like they don't get the gig, they don't get the job, you know. And so
Yeah.
like with situations like this, like for example, the festival that we just played on Saturday, where it's like we were supposed to be there at 10, and so we showed up at 10, and they were stoked on that because it's like they're like, oh, like I'm so glad you guys are here on time. Like, unfortunately, like the Beach Boys are still setting up, so like it may be a second, but it's good that you're here. We can get everything staged. And I'm like, okay, like this is why everything. This is why there's times, you know. Like
Yeah.
this is was I don't know. I just want like going off of what you said. Like I personally like the way that like I treat the road these days is like I want GLOM to have I want GLOM to have a reputation of being just extremely easy to work with. And so like yeah, like we show up, we play the show, we don't ask for too much, and that's it. You know, like we just we do what we do, and then we go. You know, nothing crazy, nothing. No, like when I always get like we went on a headline tour in May, and I was getting like super stressed about the rider, like the tour rider, and I was like, "What do you guys want for dinner?" And then like I'm just like, let's keep in mind, let's not go too crazy. Like we're not no Eminem shit like the Van Halen stories, you know.
Green M&Ms only.
Like no, we don't nothing like that. Just like, and then like for example, like the person that was running the hospitality in Minneapolis was like, he told me he was like, you guys were super easy. Like I'm so glad. Like I'm so like you guys are so chill. Like you didn't ask for anything. And I'm like, yeah. I mean like I don't want to go like I don't want to overstep my welcome anywhere. Like we're not like rock stars at all. So like I don't want to
Yeah.
act that way, you know. But
Yeah. How was that
again,
festival?
the festival was sick. It was, 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 Okay, well, let me the first thing is that was the biggest festival I've ever been to and I've ever played. Like legitimately ever. Like that was the craziest at to date. That was the craziest show that we've ever played. Just from a pure number standpoint, and it's like this is how big that show was. Okay, they were making bootlegs of the shirts for the show. Outside of the festival, they had bootlegs that had Glom's name on it, and I was like, "This is crazy! Like, this is the first time I've ever seen anything like that." Obviously, like they were just making it because it was
Did you
like
buy one?
I was going to. I didn't do it. I didn't do it, but I was like, I want the bootleg. I don't want the real one. I want
That's
the
what I'm
bootleg one. You
honestly.
know,
That's an honor to have bootleg merch, maybe.
dude, that's a dream. That's literally a dream, especially considering that I bootleg company merch all the time. Like, I would be like, yo, it'd be so
Yeah.
sick to have like a
Do
Glom
you
shirt that.
know Weed Maps? The
Yeah, yeah,
Weed.
yeah, yeah.
So when they were first coming up, they were doing a free comedy festival in Massachusetts, and they were
Okay.
like, if you wear like a Weed Map shirt, you get into the like private. And I like made one of my own, and at that point, I didn't know like
Right,
bootlegging merch would be something, and I show up like, let me in, and I remember them being like, did you make that shirt yourself? Like, we're not. And then they were like, I guess we'll let you in, but like, don't do that. But I was like, I thought people would be. Yeah, I think that's
right.
cool.
Hey, I'm just gonna go on the record. If someone makes a fake Glom shirt and wants to come to a Glom show, they're invited. They will. I will get you in. I'll make it happen because that is one of my favorite aspects of the music industry. Just people like being super down. Like
Yeah.
there's definitely people out there that's funny that like the people have given me gifts and stuff like that, like on the road and stuff like that. I just wish one day, that's a sign if you really make it, if someone's making like fake shit for you, you know?
100%.
Like,
Yeah.
look at, like, I mean, like, this is not the greatest example, but like, look at the Grateful Dead, where it's like, there's the reason why I say it's not a great example is because like that's a whole nother different culture and stuff like that. But like the Grateful Dead, like, there's people that make like livings off of making like bootleg Grateful Dead and Fish shit,
Yeah.
And so that's something there's something to say about that. It's like it's really cool, you know?
This might be in the weeds, but I want to know how you feel about this because you just did the comedy show with Gavin, right? You
Yep,
did
yep,
like so in comedy it's very big like don't film it. You know what I
yeah, yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
don't film it. Cause like what if something's taken out of context? Whatever. You know what I
Right,
mean? But I have two thoughts on that. One, if you are saying something on stage, you should be able to back it up or at least
yep,
like defend it. Like, I don't think you should get away with something on stage that you're like, I don't even know. You know what I mean? It's like if you say
right,
something, you should probably back it up. And two, I think it's good if someone films something and you can go viral that way. Like, I don't get the like
right,
less content is more. I don't know. Like, if I say something and someone films it and it goes viral, like, that's good for me. Grateful Dead use that model of like
right,
steal our shit to blow us up, you know?
right. I think it's funny because there was a moment that, um, so to jump back to the festival that we played, the band The Darkness.
Yeah.
So when The Darkness uh played their biggest song, which is the I Believe in a Thing Called Love song, they started playing it, and then like everyone in the crowd, there's probably at the Darkness set, there was legitimately like 30 or 40,000 people there. It was like insane, right? Um, and then they stopped the song, and the dude was like, no, 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 put the phones away, put the phones away. Let's just be in the moment for this. Which again, in their context, like it kind of makes sense because it's like that song's already like so massive that they'll be big forever because of that song. I was joking. I was like, no, no, no. If it was at a Glom show, like bring the phones out, like get
Yeah.
them, get them out. Like we need more footage out there.
For
Um,
real.
just because, like, I don't know, like I think that despite the fact that social media is the way that it is, I think that social media right now is still we haven't even tapped we're not even at like below the water in the iceberg of what like social media can do for artists and acts and stuff like that. So like I think that I I welcome it. I like the way that people, it's so funny because like on our tour, the headline tour that we were on, like there was a lot of people that made like videos of like seeing us and like posting it, and like some of the clips I'm like, all right, man, like to me, like this doesn't sound great because it's like, I don't know, whatever, but it's just, it still means a lot that someone like took the time and like wanted to show off that they were at like the GLOM show, which
Yeah.
is cool. And hey, I'm just gonna say, it's just like the bootleg and merch. Like I'm down. Like keep going.
I
You
think
know?
I found your stuff through one of your videos. Like I think I just heard your song on one of your like, you know what
Oh,
I
nice.
mean? Like one of
Yeah,
your
yeah, yeah,
reels, and
yeah.
I was like, oh, this shit's dope as hell. And then I,
Hey,
went through a deep dive.
hey, nice. It's working. You know?
It is working, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the leader thing. Because
Okay.
you were talking about I do want to talk about Infinite Jest and why you gave up halfway
Okay.
through and what part you gave through. But have you ever watched One Piece?
No, I actually never watched One Piece, but I'm familiar about what it is, and I'm familiar that it's a really extremely long show.
Yeah, all
And
those action figures up there are all from One Piece.
oh, that's sick. That's
That's
sick.
my big collection. And in it, Monkey D. Luffy, whatever, is the leader of the crew. He's the
Mhm.
captain of the pirates, but he's like an idiot, but he's a
Okay.
really good leader. And I think I want to say this to people listening because I feel like saying that you're a leader isn't cocky because you don't have to be
Right.
like the best to be a leader. You're just the person who like wrangles everybody and can
Yep.
control them towards a forward perspective. Like, I
Yep.
have a team, and I think I'm the dumbest person on my team, but I'm the face of my team.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? And that doesn't
Right.
mean that I'm better than them. It just means that I'm a good, like, collector of energies, and they can be the
Right.
ones that actually help because they don't want that role.
That's it's a good. The leader thing is funny because in the situation of GLOM, I obviously at this point it is my band, so it's a different situation. But like I'm listening to, I love The Sopranos, and I'm listening to like a Sopranos podcast, and they're talking about like the scene. There's like a scene in season one where it's like they're trying to figure out who's going to be the new boss, and no, like Tony is like, I don't want the job. None of you guys want the job, but someone's got to do it, and I'll do it. And then they make Junior the boss, but that's a whole nother thing. But I don't know if you're familiar with The Sopranos, but um, I
I'm
think
not.
that that's
I've
a.
never seen it, and people get real mad at me when I say
Oh, I'm not
that.
going to get mad at you. I'm just saying it is the best. It's probably the best drama that ever was put on TV. But again, it's a commitment. It's like one. It's like 80. It's an 88 episode movie.
Yeah.
That's why it's hard to watch for a lot of people, and you have to like really like commit to it. But in my opinion, it's worth it because the first season is slow and it's different from everything else. Season two gets a little bit more on brand, and then season three, once you're at season three, like that is like what the show is. And I think that I don't know, it's a huge inspiration to me for a lot of things. Just the way that it was shot and stuff like that. Like, I don't know.
To change around. I'm super ADD, and
Yeah,
that's
it's all
the
good. It's
way
all
that
good.
this podcast goes. But it's funny that you're saying like the first season's slow, second season's a little bit better, third season's when it catches up. I would describe One Piece that way. I would describe Infinite Jest that way. I would
Right.
describe a lot of things that way. And do you think that it really isn't like, do you think it's not as good, or do you think it's like you have to get into the creator's mind and it always takes a little longer to get into like the creator's mind?
I think that it really, you do have to get into the creator's mind. I don't think that it's any worse because realistically, when you rewatch the first season and the second season of Sopranos, and this is applicable to any art form, I feel like any serialized art form, because like realistically speaking, I feel the same way about the first and second GLOM album, where it's like the first and second GLOM album, like in my opinion, not quite the way that I envisioned everything. Again, I don't think it's bad at all. I still think that those are great records, especially considering that we were like so young when we did it. Um, but now when you listen to like the new songs that we've put out, which will be the fourth GLOM album, where it's like this is like what the vibe is. Like this is what it was supposed to be. And so like when you listen to that, you can go back to the first two and the first two GLOM albums and the two EPs in between and understand like the vibe that we were going for as far as a production standpoint and like songwriting and stuff like that. And I think that in the context of Infinite Jest, okay, I'll give you the Infinite Jest thing. I've tried to read Infinite Jest maybe 3 times since like 2016, and every time I get to the same point and stop, like it's around halfway. I think I appreciate how he uh tried successfully tried to make the most artistic book of like our generation, I guess, or like the century, because like
Yeah.
everything else that's like comparable to it was written like way before. And I think that it's crazy to have a modern book that has that same like vibe and I don't know, like comparing. I don't know if you've read any of like the other ones that are comparable, like Ulysses or like uh the other one that's crazy, Finnegan's Wake, the James Joyce books, because
No,
like
I
those.
haven't read those actually.
Well, I'm just gonna say right now that don't even attempt to read Finnegan's Wake. That's the hardest book I've ever like picked up in my entire life. Ulysses is a little easier to read. Ulysses is pretty similar to Infinite Jest in a lot of ways because like I don't know how to even describe it. I guess it's like postmodern's the best way to describe it because it just doesn't make sense until you zoom out. And again, with Ulysses, I haven't finished Ulysses either. So that's the whole other thing. Like again, that's another book where I go halfway and I'm like, I think I have to stop. But with Infinite Jest, I do really appreciate it for what it is. I just never could finish it. You know? Maybe it's just from a pure holding it standpoint because it's so big. And then like,
Yeah,
like it's
yeah.
just hard to hold, you know?
Have you ever tried? Are you an audiobook guy?
No, I'm actually here's the weird thing, okay? I'm not really I have a hard time listening to things. Like I have a hard time listening to music a lot of times. I have a hard time listening to podcasts. I have a hard time listening to audiobooks. I don't know what it is. I think that like my girlfriend always gets kind of mad at me about this, but like if we're in the car and like the aux cable, like something happens with the aux cable and it's just like vibrating or like making like the hum, I just leave it for like a long. I leave it for like way too long, and then she's like, "I can't do this anymore. Like you have to turn this off. We're turning this off. I can't do it." And I just think that like maybe for some reason the way that my brain works, like if I'm going to listen to something, it has to be something that's close to noise, if that makes sense. Like for example, one of my favorite genres of music, and this is not present in GLOM at all, which is why it's just funny. I love grindcore. I love grindcore, and I love like heavier, like the more extreme versions of like hardcore music, because at a certain point it just becomes noise, and I like that. You know,
What about it?
I don't know. I just feel like it's so much like audio stimulation that I can just it's like a white noise machine or something, or it's like a fan or something like that, where it's just like keeps going. It just stays on like one like frequency, and I just think that that's like kind of calming to me in a way.
No, I get that. I like extremes too. It's
Right.
weird. Like the most fucked up horror movie is
Yep.
gonna give me like a calmness, or like
Right.
or even comedy, like really really dark. Like Doug Stanhope is one of my favorites because
Right.
it's like it's watching people go to the edge. Because I
Right.
don't know, I'm not a person that'll go to the edge really. Like I'm too
Right.
much of a scaredy cat to
Right.
like push it to the nth degree. But I enjoy watching other people do it. I enjoy seeing people fully give in to the art, you know?
Right. 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 Um, did you do that? You did Skankfest the other
Yeah.
day?
Uh-huh.
And so was there's another guy that I know that was there, that Josh Josh Adam Myers, was he
Oh
there?
yeah. Yes,
Yeah,
he
yeah, I
was
know that
there.
guy.
Yeah.
We're from the same place. So
Oh, really?
yeah, yeah. Well, he's from the town that's like behind the one that I grew up in. But like we're
That's
from the same
yeah, he
place.
does like the goddamn comedy jam where it's
Yep.
like
Yep.
karaoke for comedians.
It's funny too because like so I met him at the clothing store that I used to work at,
Hmm.
and then like we made the connection that we're from the same place and whatever. And then what was funny about it is that his photographer is like a friend of mine from like growing up, like from like skateboarding. And so
Yeah.
like he posted a bunch of pictures, and it was like he tagged like the guy that I grew up with who also does photos for GLOM. And I was like, yo, like I know this dude. Like this is the homie
That's
from back in the day.
crazy.
You know? Dude, there's so many like weird little connections like that. I feel like the area that we grew up in, like in Maryland, really like is like a breeding ground for like creative stuff because
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, do you know who Sam Herring is?
that name sounds familiar. Who is
Singer
that?
of Future Islands?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so Baltimore.
Hemlock
Okay,
Ernst is also what he goes by, yeah, but
okay.
he's from the
So
Baltimore, Maryland area.
Baltimore, the Future Islands thing's funny because they had their practice space is in the same studio that like one of my friends had like a art studio in, and so like they were always like practicing in there, and like it's like in Baltimore, like you see them around a lot. When I lived in Baltimore, all like you'd always see them out. You'd always see like who's the other band? Beach House. Like, you know,
Oh
Beach
yeah.
House. So like they're always around, and like Turnstile. They're like, Baltimore's so small that like you'd always see like, and you always know someone that knows them. You know, it's a funny little. They call it Smaltimore, so it's like that's the truth. You know, it's tiny.
How other people see you never is this how it really is in your hometown. Like
Right. Right.
no one I know this is a bump, whatever, everyone knows this, but it's like you don't get respect. You don't get the love in your
No.
hometown really that
No, not at
you
all,
ever do. You know what I mean? It's like
dude.
I get booked less in Boston than anywhere in the whole country, like in the whole country.
Absolutely. I think it's really funny because like the New York music scene like does not really like GLOM, which is not. I'm not saying the people because like yeah, the last like couple shows we played have been like pretty good, but I'm saying like other musicians in the area in like the scene, like the ones that are like cool, they don't fuck with GLOM at all, which is
Why do
fine.
you think that is?
Uh, it's a tricky one. Like I don't personally, I think it's because I don't really. Okay, let me try to figure out how to like say this. So one thing that I've been doing personally, like recently, um, I've just kind of stopped trying to make content, write songs, make stuff to necessarily impress those people or like impress like I don't know how to really describe it like in a non like confrontational way, but it's like
Yeah.
I feel like I could care less if like someone that's like super fucking like sceney and cool in the music scene like likes GLOM. I'd much prefer like I would rather someone in like Iowa be down and like someone in like because like in a lot of ways like I don't know like I like I want to connect with people that I don't know connect with people that uh there was a quote that I heard the other day from the guy from Title Fight. This is also funny because he's like we've played a show with his band before and stuff like that. So there's a whole other small world thing. But like he he said, I want to connect with people that I want my music to connect with people that need it, you know? And I think that that's like important for me. That like that statement really like summed it up in a good way because like I just feel like there's definitely someone in like Minnesota that lives in Minnesota where there's not a lot going on the scale that like stuff is going on in New York or on the East Coast in Boston, whatever. And I want them to listen to GLOM and be like, "Oh, this makes me feel good," you know, or like something. Like, I don't know. I don't know if this is coming across in like a weird way, but it's like I growing up where I grew up, like when I heard when I found music that really like resonated with me, like I appreciated it a lot because when you grow up in like I don't know, the DC suburbs are really weird to grow up in because it's like there's a lot of weird energy in DC. I don't know if you've ever been, but
Yeah.
it's a strange place. A lot of weird things happen, like in high school and like stuff like that, like weird, like very serious things. Like a lot of weird stuff happens there, and so like you can being able to find something that resonates with you because let's say you're not you're an outsider to your friend or like to your classmates in school and stuff like that because you don't like fall into like the like I don't know, like one thing that I was really let's open up a little bit. When I was in high school, like I never really had the plan to go to college the way that everyone did in the school that I went to. And so like that was a ostracizing moment because like all like my friends and stuff like that were like, oh, like I'm gonna go to Ivy League school or like whatever. And I was like, well, like my parents can't really afford it. Like I can't like I'm not smart enough to get like a scholarship or anything. And so that was like kind of a moment where I was like, I really like connected with certain music at that point because like they were also the same way, like the people that I was listening to. And like one of the bands that I got really into when I was that age was the band Fugazi, who was also from the same area. And so like a lot of their like, you know, struggles, I guess, or like, emotional problems were similar because it's the same thing. It's like you like a certain, you don't want to like fall in. I just feel like I wasn't able to really fall into the same things that a lot of people did, like in the school that I went to. And so, like, finding music at that point in my life was very important. And I want the same thing. I want people to find GLOM and like feel the same thing that I feel because, like, at the end of the day, like, I make GLOM, like all the songs that I write and everything all the recordings that we make and stuff like that, like I make them because I want to listen to it. Like this is what I want to hear. And so like if someone else is down, that's great. That makes it amazing. But like at the end of the day, like I'm still gonna just make it for myself to listen to too. I don't know if
Yeah.
that makes any sense.
It
But
resonates heavy. This conversation is bringing me such peace. And this, as you probably know, or whatever, this isn't like a normal interview. Like,
right, right, right.
I don't ask questions. I just want to talk to you. And I hope people relate to it. But honestly, it just
Yeah,
brings
yeah,
me peace to meet people with similar mindsets.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
for
that's why
sure.
I relate to your music. When I heard it, it brought me a sense of calm that was like, very rare, especially because it's like I'm a rap guy, really.
Right,
So for alt indie, it's there's very certain music that I relate to. You know what I
right,
mean? And
right, 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 right.
hearing your music or like whatever, when I heard like Kurt Vile or Dry Cleaning for the
Right,
first time, it
right.
just brings me a level of peace that I know is relatable. It's funny, I'm watching this movie called The Last Days of Tour, and it's
Uh-huh.
about David Foster Wallace. And it's
Yep.
about the guy who wrote the Rolling Stone article about him,
Right.
like following him on the last few days of his book tour. And David Foster Wallace in it is saying, he's like, well, even if you wanted to pick up my book, you're probably like not a weirdo, but like there's a reason that something draws you to this. And I think that's a very artistic thing where it's like there's a
Right.
reason certain people are drawn together, and it's the mindset of whether it be loneliness or misunderstanding that we all feel.
Right. I agree with that. That's the movie with Jason Segel.
Yeah,
Right.
Jesse Eisenberg, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I never saw it, but I want to because I like Segel.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
funny, I saw it before I even knew what the book was about. I watched it when it came out
Right.
because I like those actors. And now rewatching it, it's like adds a different level of
Now you know what they're
understanding.
talking about. You know the book.
Exactly. Well,
Right.
also it's kind of sucks being relating to weird white guys is a
Right.
really tough thing. You're
Right.
like like I read Confederacy of Dunces, another fucking crazy
Right.
white guy book by an author who killed himself, and I
Right.
hate relating to those things, you know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is the thing though. Like when you relate to stuff like that, it doesn't make you like crazy, you know, in my opinion. Like it was funny because my girlfriend and I watched Taxi Driver recently,
Hmm.
and there was a lot of stuff that was going on with that character that my girlfriend was like, I'm Taxi Driver, I'm him. You know, and I was like, well, you know, you're not trying to assassinate the president, you're fine, you know. But it's just
Yeah.
like, you know, that's why those like that form of media or those pieces of media are so successful because like going back to the extreme thing, it is just the extreme version of a lot of feelings that people have. And I think that it's those pieces of art are important, you know, in a lot of ways because it's like it shows that like, you know, in one way you're not alone, but then in another way, like this is what could happen if you like let it go unchecked
Yeah.
in a lot of regards. Like especially in Confederacy of Dunces, that guy, I mean, I read that book. That guy is like a menace, you know? So it's
Literally
like
the worst person.
right, right. But at
But
the end
then,
of the day,
like, you
like
relate to him. I related to him so
right,
much it upset me. I was like,
right.
damn.
I remember that. That was a good book though. I liked that.
That was a good one. There's
Yeah.
very funny laugh out loud books. It's very
Yes.
hard for me to like laugh at a book.
Yes, I agree for me, but there was a couple that I read that I was like, this is insane, you know, and that
Yeah.
was one of them. That was in high school. I had to read that book in high school.
Really?
Dude, the place that I went to high school was like insane. Like every book that we read was like insane media, like insane literature, you know,
Yeah.
like really, really intense. Everything was really like super intense. And I think that's probably why I didn't do as well in school as I could have, because like this stuff would have resonated with me more when I was like an adult, you know? But
As a fan of your music, I feel like that relates to how you write.
okay, okay,
Growing up with
yeah,
hearing you say that, growing up with really strange, intense literature, I feel
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
your themes in your music are a lot deeper, or you touch upon things that are could be directly related to that. Not to speak out of turn.
No, no, no. You know, it's interesting to me because like I don't. It's very interesting that you bring that up because I don't feel I I don't know what people think of the lyrics that I write. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. Like for me, like it's funny because like with the song Glass, right? That's the
Hmm.
most recent song that we put out, or second most recent. Um, people are like hitting like people like DM the page all the time, and they talk about how there's like specific lines that resonate with them, and one of the lines that it's like a this line one of the lines that people always recite is the line finally took the trip out west, actually not yet, I try hard to make things meet, it's harder than it seems, right? That's the line. And people are like, yo, you don't understand, like this line means so much to me. And like to me, I'm like, what's funny about it is that that line to me is literally literal because we were supposed to go to a wedding, and yeah, it was in California, and we took a plane, and that was it. But like to other people, like that means a lot to them, and I don't really exactly know. But there was one person that said like, "It's crazy that you said this line because like I was supposed to do this thing, but like I'm holding back from doing it." Right? And I'm like, "Oh, that's crazy." Like like I didn't even like intend on that being like the real like line. Like people are like interpreting it as being like I have to go do this thing, something that's like the right thing to do, and I can't do it, you know? And this just shows that like art in general has such a subjective uh morality or subjective like interpretation that is the most important thing about the art world and like music or whatever, because I don't know how people listen to these songs. You know what I mean? Like I don't know what they're getting out of it. So for you to say that that's how you interpret it, that means a lot because in a lot of ways, like I don't really know when I'm like writing this stuff down and like when we're recording the lines, like I don't really know what like with a lot of the songs, like I don't quite understand what I'm talking about until after it's already out, you know? And I don't know why that is necessarily, because like in the moment, like at the studio, like the lines, I like the lines, like, and I'm like, oh, like there's a lot of the words that end up getting changed when we're recording them. And then I'm like, oh, like this is cool. And then like a year later, I'm like, oh man, like I know exactly what I'm talking about now. Like, this is funny. Like, here's an example. Um, with the song called Matches that came out in 2020. I did not interpret, like when I was writing those words, like I didn't quite realize that I was referring to the fact that I was, well, because like I'm mixed race. And so like when growing up mixed race, and a lot of people like don't really like discuss this, it's hard because like you're not really fully accepted in any side of whatever you are, like, you know, whatever the racist may be, I guess. Because I don't know, like in like the Filipino world, like a lot of people like didn't like really like accept me because I had a white dad. And then in the white world, like I'm not white, so like you can't like really win. And like that song, I didn't quite understand that that was what that song's talking about until a year after it was already recorded. And so it's funny. It's funny to hear it, because sometimes you'll hear a person talk about your whatever it is you made, or like a joke that you wrote or whatever, and it means something to them, that it unlocks what it actually meant to you. And I think
Yeah.
that that's an interesting, it's an interesting part about this process, you know.
This is going to sound really disrespectful to what you just said,
Okay.
but there's a point to me saying it where it's like ideas are like farts, where it's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
they do just come and you don't know where or
yeah.
how, but they just come. And if you don't latch onto it, it could be gone forever. Or
Yep,
like, how many times have I had a great idea and I lose it and it never comes back? And it's just like, ideas are wanting to, like, it's like fishing. Like
yep, yep,
writing is like fishing, and
yep,
you just don't know what it means or where it comes from, but it can be the most important thing. And it's really strange in that way. I know that wasn't
yeah.
an intelligent way to put it, but
No, no, that makes total sense, because like, let me, not to just keep talking about the song Glass, although that is like my, it has become my favorite song that I've done. But the irony about the whole thing is like, you literally, you kind of just encapsulated the entire process of how it was written, because I was literally just like I was just, I one of the things in my writing process, I like to write uh like songs when I'm watching TV. And that's been like my process since I was like 12 years old, like legitimately. And with the song Glass, my girlfriend and I were just watching TV, and I was noodling on the guitar, and I like the riff came out, right? And I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, we'll see. Like, well, this is a cool riff. Like in the morning, if I still remember how to play it, like literally that's how like I think. I was like, if I can remember how to play it in the morning, I'll like try to write a song, right? And then in the morning, I at that point in time, I was like posting every riff idea I had. I would just post it on TikTok back then, just so I could remember it for later. And like that one, it didn't like blow up or anything, but it got like some serious views and people that were actually into it, right? And I was like, oh, like this is cool. This was in 2022, FYI. I was like, okay, let me like try to write a song to this. And then it took forever to write the real song. Um, and then in December, when the song was already recorded, I posted another video of it, and that was the one that went viral on Instagram. So it's like that is so funny that like the way that it came about was me just messing around and then being like, oh, you know what? In the morning, if I can remember it, I'll write something. You know, it could have been gone forever. You never know. It could have
yeah.
like I could have forgotten how to play it.
You don't know why people connect with that, like connected with those chords, because it wasn't even the
No,
lyrics. It was
no,
like a sound. That, as
yeah,
a non-musician, that's really weird to me. Like, what's more important, words or sounds? You know?
yeah. And going back to the conversation we had a second ago, that's why if I found it really like funny that people were DMing me lyrics from that song, or like DMing me like people like people being like, oh, like my favorite part of this entire song is like this word, and I'm like, oh, this is crazy because like most people only really like it for the riff, you
Yeah.
know. But then some people like again like it is all like I don't know. Songs are like kind of like a painting where it's like, yeah, you can like laser in on one part of it, but like at the end of the day, like you still have to zoom out and look at it and realize that it's a painting, you know? And I
Yeah.
think that like with that song in particular, it's funny because I don't know what it is about that song that people like, you know? And it's again, that's with every song that I've ever put out where it's like, I don't know what people like about this. Like I don't get why
But
this
don't you
song,
wish you did? Don't you
yeah.
wish you knew why
Hey,
people
you know the
liked you?
story about
You
Weezer?
know?
Dude, you know the story about Weezer where um this story's crazy. He Rivers Cuomo, they like the song Buddy Holly like blew up, right? This is in the 90s. And he like completely got obsessed with trying to figure out like in a mathematical way why that song blew up. And so he has like these notebooks apparently of just like written down like formulaic reasons why songs are big, right? And I think that I can't do that first off, but it is a really interesting thing to think because like realistically maybe it does have some sort of like a mathematical reason why like you get to this point in the song like as far as a ratio goes and it's like this point in the song is why people start liking the song or like this this reason this like smile on the Mona Lisa is why people like it, you know, like
Yeah.
it's just one of those things where there, I part of me like likes the mystery, you know, where it's like I don't know why, and that's why I'm into it, you know.
I mean,
But
I'm a straight up masochist in that way where it's like I feel like this podcast is like antiviral. You know,
oh,
like the way we
oh,
talk, there's nothing that's like gonna get people to be like, "Oh, that's what I want
right,
to watch." But I do think that real conversations are way more important.
oh
And
yeah,
what pissed me off is I have a clip with 50 fucking million views talking about a guy lying about Mario, saying that
right,
Itsumi is Japanese for super. And
right,
it did 50 million views, and people like, and I know if I just do dumb entertainment clips
right,
of like, do you know any nerdy facts? And then you
right,
say a nerdy fact, it'll go viral. But it's like it pisses me off that that goes
right,
viral.
right,
I want you talking about real shit or us talk like to be the thing that gets big. But
right.
that's not it.
Yeah, I mean, it also goes to show that like it is interesting that there's you know you don't. I think it's important to not necessarily make your art or whatever you want to call it for the algorithm because at the end of the day like art for art's sake is important in a lot of regards and so like it's interesting it's like I think
Yeah,
that like it is a good thing in my opinion to you know you doing this podcast to try to like get human conversations like out there because that's important, you know, like we're losing that like as much as I love social media we're losing that in a certain regard
yeah.
because like everything's like super condensed to like fit into like a 90-second like in uh attention span, you know? And so,
Do you think social media is ruining music? I don't want to say ruining, but I feel like, all right, I'll speak on it on comedy.
okay.
Every joke is 60 to 90 seconds now.
Yep.
Every joke that someone tells is reel length or YouTube short length.
Right.
And so it's hard to have these long, sprawling jokes, which is what I fell in love with comedy for,
Right.
is like it could be 6 minutes of nothing funny.
Right.
But that to the is music that same way, or people like this song needs to have 60 great seconds?
So that's a great question. I think the answer is not quite as simple as yes and no because ever since this doesn't even necessarily have to do with social media. The way that the Spotify algorithm works, at least the way that I have heard that it works, is that like it really like optimizes when things are uh when like the hook of the song or like the vocals of the song like hit in within the first like 5 seconds of the song or whatever. right? And I think that there was a period where people in like the peak of Spotify, which was like, and we're not even at the peak anymore, FYI, just the peak of Spotify, in my opinion, was like 2017 through 2022, right? I think we're out of it, which is neither here nor there. I think that there was a moment where people were definitely writing songs for that uh to hit those benchmarks. And I not to say every single song on a record was like that, but there was like a good majority of like the singles that had those benchmarks where it was like, okay, the drums come in here, like whatever. The song the most important thing that I had gleaned from back then was that like the song, like the hook of the song starts right away or within the first like 3 seconds of the song, right? To keep the attention going, right? And while I think that that sucks in certain regards, at the end of the day, like people have been, as far as I'm concerned, people have been writing for mediums forever. So like, you know, like you look at the Beatles where it's like, okay, like they were like doing, they were making these records. The way that the decisions that they made in a production standpoint were because they intended for the record to be listened to on a record player or like stuff like that. Like they never thought that people would be listening to their records in a car or like stuff like that. And I think that has existed for a long time. And with the music thing, I think that it's more so social media has changed the way that people promote music. I don't necessarily think it has changed the way people the way that music is in general in the same way that it has in comedy. Because in comedy, like like a lot of like the comedians that I know have voiced the same concerns, and that sucks because at the end of the day, it's like I do love like those crazy long like not funny Norm Macdonald jokes. Like that's like my kind of comedy, you know, or like stuff that's like long form, like Nathan For You stuff, which is like you can't like condense that down to like a 5 minute or like a 1 minute clip because like that
Yeah.
it's like a whole episode has a punchline at the end, you know?
Yeah, Nathan For You is incredible.
I think that um it's fascinating to discuss this particular point because at the end of the day, it kind of weeds out like who your real audience is because the people that like fuck with your social media or your clips on your 1 minute long jokes, like how many of them would actually come to a show? And then of the people that actually do come to a show, then they're the ones that are more likely to appreciate the long jokes because like they're actually there. And I think that that is an interesting thing. Like it's an insane tool, but it's not the end all be all of like what the medium is. And I think that
Yeah.
that's like an important thing to think about because there's definitely people out there that just make their jokes because they know that it'll do well. And it's like I think that it's important or like makes their song like have the hook at a certain point because they know that they can use it for social media or whatever, which is of course fine because at the end of the day, like marketing is marketing and it's always been like annoying, but it has to happen if you want to be successful, I suppose. But
Yeah.
it's an interesting, it's a really like fascinating game to navigate. That's not necessarily like I think that I'm gonna be writing songs to fit that 1 minute 30 second thing, but I think it's a fun parameter to try to market it. I don't necessarily think that it's ruining anything because if I I don't know, man, that's a good question. It's a real thinker, you know. I think that like the people that I'm not trying to I don't want to speak for anyone else, but like for the people that come to GLOM shows, like the people that actually come to a GLOM show and the people that actually buy the merch, like they're down. They don't care that like this song took 3 minutes to get to the hook that they heard on Instagram or whatever, you
Hmm.
know? And so I think that in a lot of ways it's it's important to try to weed out what your true audience is, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. And I think finding people who actually like you is important and not just like whatever the hottest thing is. Like,
Right.
oh, you can sell tickets this year, but in 5 years, can you sell tickets type thing? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, you want people to actually want to be a fan of you for a long time, you know?
Right. Right. It's again, granted, like social media has the power to have like the virality and like the success of that way, but it's like the way that like we the GLOM team like works on stuff, it's like it's a marathon. It's a marathon because like the thing that's crazy about social media is like doesn't matter how many numbers you have, it's not real in the same regards as like who's actually coming to your shows. And so like or who's actually listening to your music or whatever like you want to say. Because and I think it's really important obviously to like nurture that side of it as well, but at the end of the day it's like you have to nurture the other side too. You have to
Yeah.
like try to like make sure you're putting on the best show. Like realistically speaking, like our numbers at our first headline tour weren't like amazing, but like at the end of the day, it's like yo, like there were 77 people that came to see us in Chicago. Like we've never played in Chicago before, and so it's like I want to make sure those people have the best show ever. Like not getting pissed that it's not sold out because
Yeah,
like
77 is great. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's crazy because like yeah, like if you look at the analytics, it's like oh, like we have like 300 plus followers from Chicago on Instagram on Spotify or whatever, right?
Hmm.
And then it's like, well, in theory, like all those people should come to the show, and then that would be a sick show. But it's like, no, I think that we had 77 people in Chicago, and it's like I want every single one of those 77 people to like go away from that show feeling like they saw the best show that they could have seen. You know,
Yeah.
just be like, and I feel like that was the case, and I think that that's important to like I don't know. Like I just want like it costs a lot of money to go to stuff and like to see stuff. Like I want people to like have a great experience seeing us play or like the just because it's not sold out doesn't mean it's not gonna rock. It's still gonna be a good time, you know?
As a fan, some of my favorite shows have been empty and that the artist hasn't let it affect them. I've been on tours where I've seen people freak out at the audience that there aren't more
Yeah,
people there. And I'm
yeah,
like, what are you doing? You're
yeah,
alienating the only people. But as a fan, it's like I saw some people with like I saw like Mark Normand in 2016 with like
yep,
10 people in the audience.
yep,
And it was one of the best shows I ever saw, you know what I
yeah.
mean?
No, that's a crazy thing that like and that's a whole nother side of it too, because I feel like a lot of people like they take pride in it when they like people that like really like going to concerts and like live music fans and stuff like that. Like there was someone at this festival that was like that posted a picture of us at during our set and like they wrote on it. They were like, I can't believe I'm here for the first like GLOM festival show. Like this is like an honor, like huge honor and stuff like that. And like again with me personally, like I've seen so many shows like of bands that are big now that like where there was like no one there where it's like, yeah, like well, this is a weird situation because I saw a show in Brooklyn. It was a comedy show, and it was Joe Pera, and he had a special guest, and the special guest was Eric Andre, and there was only 50 people there or something like that. Where it was like, all
Yeah.
right, like that's crazy. Like he's famous now, so like that's funny. But um, I don't know, with like bands and stuff, it's like, like I don't know. I think that like one of my favorite bands right now is called Spiritual Cramp, and we opened for them last year. Um, and I saw their first show on the East Coast. I saw it. Like, and there was like 20 people there. And like now they're like doing like huge festivals and like like they're opening for like massive bands and stuff like that. And like that's something that I hold like close to me because I'm like, like that's crazy. Like when they're like the next big thing, like I'm gonna remember like being like, oh, I saw them at this Chinese restaurant in Baltimore,
Yeah.
and I think that like people definitely like feel that way about like Guam, and I think that that's cool.
And I won't keep you for much longer. I know you're mid-drive, but in high school when you were lost, what did you think your future was going to be like versus how you feel now about where you're at?
Well, I don't think that I'm the best. Uh, let me rephrase this. This is exactly what I thought I was going to do. Just so everyone is on the same page. Like I have this paper from fifth grade where they were like, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" When you grow up, and I wrote in fifth grade, I said, "I want to be a rock star." Right. And at that point in time, which is funny, I didn't even know how to play anything. Like my dad, I mean, I come from a musical family. Like my dad is a musician, and like his siblings are musicians and stuff like that. No one is like professional per se anymore. But like my dad was like a church music guy, and like et cetera, et cetera. Um, he said that I should not learn how to play guitar until my hands were as big as his, which I didn't quite get at the time because like, I was a kid and I was like, oh, I want to learn how to play guitar now. And his reasoning was like, if you have a hard time physically trying to do it, I feel like you might not actually want to do it. When you might get discouraged because you're not physically capable yet, right? And so in fifth grade, I wrote that. I wrote this whole like paper about how I wanted to be a rock star. Like it's my dream to play guitar in front of a lot of people, like whatever. And then in high school, I was still playing music, and like I wanted from that point, like that was like there was never any doubt in my mind that this was what I was not. I was gonna be doing this. Like this was like exactly what I wanted to do. Like when I was in like 11th grade, I was like, I want to be like a musician. In 12th grade, I want to be a musician. And then college, I want to be a musician. And then when I joined the touring band, I was like, I'm a musician. And then when that band broke up, I was like, well, I'm going to start another band. And like, I'm going to be a musician, And so at that point, I was definitely a little bit more like, uh, I didn't quite know like how it worked at all, you know, and like
Yeah.
I didn't quite know like understand like because especially that when I was in high school, that was like I don't know how old you are, but like this was like the beginning, like this was like the peak of Pitchfork. Like this was like when Pitchfork, like the publication was
I'm
like
27.
okay, I'm 31, and like that was like the like moment. That was like 2010, 2011, like all those bands to me, even though like realistically speaking now they're like not big at all, but like back then like all those bands that they had like told me about, those are my favorite bands. Like I loved the band. There was a band called Girls, and there was a band called Yuck. And those bands were just like grinding, like touring, like literally just grinding. Not They were not big. They were just playing shows, like, and they would just play shows all the time, right? And I didn't quite understand. It didn't make any sense to me that it's like, oh, like they have agents, they have people like doing it for them, like like it didn't. It took me a long time to realize that, like, to get to the point where you're in a publication, like it took a lot of work. So I realized that they had been bands for years before that, and then now I'm talking about them as if they were like giant. But it was funny because that Pitchfork article, same like when I was obsessed with Pitchfork, they they had the first weekend EP that you could download for free. And I remember like
Wow.
downloading it, and this was like 2010 or 2011, and I was like, "This is the greatest thing I'd ever heard." I was obsessed with it, And then,
I remember that too. I was obsessed with the same thing. Yeah. I
dude,
remember
that
that
first EP
shit.
was so hot, like so sick. Like again, like he went pop, and like that's whatever, because like a lot of people do go pop, but like that was like so important to me, like finding that weekend EP and like being like, even though like at that point in time I was like really only into like shoegaze and like indie rock and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Like that record to me still resonated as if it
And his
was.
lyrics were so inaccessible, not inaccessible, but
Oh, it's
like
just
his lyrics are just, he's a crazy person. Like
yeah,
he's an
yeah, yeah. I
actual,
was like, damn, like this guy's dark. Like who is that? And
yeah,
then like look at him now. He's like the number one on Spotify. Like I guess he's not
literally.
number one anymore. But like, it's just funny that like that publication like got me to do that. And it's funny because speaking on the weekend in 2012, they had posted an ad, and this is like actually insane. I remember this. I can't find the email anymore. I must have deleted it, but like they had posted a um like a casting call or like an audition thing for his live band, because I don't think he had played any shows at that point. And this was like 2012, so it's a year after the EP came out. And first of all, I don't think anyone was expecting that EP to actually blow up. So that was part of it. And so they had this thing, and I remember reading it, and it was like, we're looking for like people to play in the band. Send like footage of you playing and stuff to this email address. And I emailed them, and I remember like getting a response that was like, hi, like we like what like we're down, like we at that time I was really into playing bass, and so they were like, we like what we hear, whatever, blah blah blah. Would you be willing to like relocate to Toronto? And at the time I was like 19 years old, and I was like, nah, you know, I was like, nah. And then I just didn't get the gig. Or I didn't like even like follow up with it. But like I just remember that point because like I was obsessed with the weekend at that point. That was
Do you
before he was.
regret not moving to Toronto to be in the Weekend's band?
Well, not really, because like I like where I'm at now, but like it is kind of funny to think that like what if I did go, you know?
Yeah.
And like again, like I would be really curious to see if like, because I don't have those emails anymore, but like if someone like on his team still had them, and then be like, like see like the fucking stupid video I sent them of like it wasn't okay. It wasn't a self video. It wasn't a self shot video. It was literally a video of me playing a gig that was like epic. So it was like cool. And I was wearing like a crazy. I don't know how into fashion you are. I was like at that point in time I was obsessed with Stussy, and I was like wearing this crazy Stussy jacket and like and stuff like that. And there, I think they must have liked the look because I was vibing. But it was just funny to think that like how different everything could have been. Just
That is crazy.
you know,
That's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool story to end on. I
yeah,
appreciate that, man.
yeah, hell yeah.
Thank you for doing it. Well, thank you for making time to do this for
Hey, no,
real.
thanks for having me. I love talking, so
And this was
especially
an
love
awesome
talking to
one.
someone that's cool. So
How did you and Gavin meet? If you mind me, how did you guys? How did that
okay,
show come together? If you mind me, just finishing on that,
yeah, yeah, for
because
sure.
he's
Like,
one of
yeah.
my favorite comedians. I think he's a brilliant writer. Like
Oh yeah, he's the best.
he's one of the funniest. Like
So here's the thing with Gavin. This is a funny story. So he one day in 2023, I remember like okay, let me start from the real beginning. I remember at one point in like 20 probably 2021 or 2022, I got a DM from him and he was like, "Hey man, like I really like your music. Like I'm a comedian. Like if you ever want to come to a show, like let me know." And I just wasn't thinking anything about it because I didn't at that point in time like I got never got any DMs. So I was like, okay, like whatever. Like I don't really I'm not thinking much of this. Like no offense to him, of course, but like he's aware of this. I didn't quite
yeah,
understand what it was. Like, and I didn't like quite understand who he was or anything like that. And so I just like said like, hey, thanks so much. Like I'll let you know, whatever. Didn't hear from him, you know. And then one day in 2023, this guy DMs me on Instagram, a guy we played a show with, and he was like, "Yo, like this dude gave you a huge shout out on the Bill Burr podcast," and I was like, "What guy? Like what?" And then he sent me the link, and he had the link set to the time that it was at, and I clicked on it, and it was Gavin, and he was like, "Oh, like I love this band called GLOM," like, and then he spelled it out, like he said GLOM, which is funny too because there is a lot of search engine optimization problems on my end, but it was funny that he said that. And at that point, the video had like 100,000 views, and I was like, "What the hell is that? Like, who is this guy?" You know?
yeah,
And then from that moment, I was like, "Dude, like, thanks so much for like doing that. Like, this means a lot. Like, you don't understand. Like, this is really helpful. Like, you're putting me on, whatever." Um, and then he was like, a couple months later, because that was the time when the trajectory of the band changed like completely because like literally that day. Okay, what's crazy about it is I took a clip, I like made a clip of that and like posted it, and like that video did really well. And then the next day was the video that went viral on Instagram, and that was the thing that literally changed everything like from that moment. And then a couple months later, like things were kind of stabilizing on my end as far as like I had like we were trying to like do some show, whatever. He's like, hey, like I want to do a show. I want to do like a music and comedy show because I had this date at the Bell House. Like, would you be interested? And I was like, yeah. I asked my agents because like they have a very specific strategy, and I was like, what do you think of this? And they're like, this is a great idea. Because this is something that like I don't know, like I don't I never thought of anything like I never really think of things. I didn't think of things this way leading up to that point, but they were like, this is something that can really like create like real fans. Like you're going to be able to really connect with a different demographic of people that you wouldn't have normally, right? And again, like I don't really like want to think of things like super business like that, but it is true,
yeah. It
like,
is true. Yeah, yeah.
and so he's like, yo, like I had this date at the Bell House. You want to do it? And I was like, sure, let's do it. What do you have in mind? And he was like, well, we should do it where it's like kind of a variety show where like you play and then like we do some comedy and then you play again and then we do some more comedy. And I had played comedy shows in the past, like in other bands that I've been in. And it's definitely like a little awkward because like the when you're at a comedy show, like comedy fans like don't they don't know how to respond to music because it's a comedy show. And again,
Yeah.
that's
It's very sitting versus standing. I understand. Yeah,
Exactly,
comedy
exactly.
you sit, music you stand.
Exactly. And then Gavin was like, nah, like we should lean into it and like make it like weird because like that's a whole nother layer of comedy, the way that his brain works. And so he's like, let's make it like weird. So like they don't understand how they're supposed to react to this situation, right? And I'm like, okay, cool. And so we did the show and the whole he was like, okay, you're gonna go out and play 3 songs. You play 3 songs and then I'll come up. But in between you finishing and me coming up, you gotta stay on the mic that like you gotta be like, where is he? Like, we didn't want to do this show. Like, uh like we're doing this as a favor to him. Like, why isn't he like he's supposed to be here like right now? He's supposed to be up here. Like we were supposed to do 2 songs and we're doing 3, whatever. And then like while we're saying that, he's in the back with the mic and he's like, what do you mean you didn't want to do the show? And then like that was like the moment that like it kind of like set in for like the audience where it's like, okay, like I get it now. It's like a
Yeah, yeah.
joke, you know. But again, I loved it. I had a great time doing it. Everyone in the band was like super stoked, and like Gavin was super stoked, and like he's the homie, and we're gonna do it again. So
Live Nation.
yeah.
I don't want to do that to you, but no. Thank you so much for doing this, man. I
Hey.
really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. We'll talk again soon, huh?
Are you coming to Boston anytime soon?
We played in Boston in May. I think we'll probably hit them again. Probably like in the spring maybe.
Cool. Well, I'm
Yeah.
definitely gonna pop out when you're in Boston.
Oh yeah, you let me know. Let me know.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Hey,